Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final Politics in a Pint. Can you hear me okay? Okay, I'm assuming. Okay. Welcome to the final Politics in a Pint. I'm so glad to have you all here. It's a nice personal night tonight. We'll be talking about access to higher education. We are joined by Hannah Jensen from SCSU College Possible, Sydney Robinson, who is a student at St. Ben's and receives financial aid. She'll talk about how that impacts her college experience tonight. We have Precious Palmer from the SCSU College Possible office, and we have Hannah Salto, who is the college navigator at CSBSJU. If you haven't been to a Politics in a Pint yet, our format goes a little bit like this. We'll give each of our panelists about 5 to 6 minutes to tell what they do in their field of research or in their office and how it relates to our topic tonight. And from there, we'll open up for questions from the crowd. So as you're thinking, or as you're hearing them speak, think about questions and how we can engage with our panelists tonight. Thank you. Do you want me to start?
Okay, I can start. Hi, everyone. Is this on? Can you hear me? Okay, how are you doing? Oh, I was like, no, that bad, huh? The sun is out. So I'm Hannah Salto. I'm the college navigator at St. Ben's and St. John's. Essentially what that means is I work with first-generation students. And at St. Ben's and St. John's, we define that as any student whose parent doesn't have a 4-year degree. So they can have some college. They can have gone to college for 6 years and just never completed a 4-year degree, and we still count that. My position started in January of 2017. I'm the first person in the position. It's a brand new job at St. Ben's and St. John's. I work partially in admissions, so I work with the admission staff to recruit first-generation students and help them navigate that process of applying, FAFSA, any questions they have about college, whether that be at St. Ben's and St. John's or elsewhere. So I work with them. So this is our last month push till the May 1st national deadline, so everybody's really busy in that office. And then I also work in student development. So my office is housed in student development in the Intercultural and International Student Services office area. And in that role, I work with particularly first-year students, but students in all cohorts that are first generation, to help them navigate the landscape of higher education. So that can look like helping them find scholarships, whether they be from the institution or outside, helping them learn how to talk to professors and knowing that that's okay, helping them renew their financial aid, just being someone to talk to about the issues that they're going through, so things like that. So I work in student development and do that. I have a couple of roles within that. One initiative that we're taking this year, we have our first event tomorrow, actually, is the First Generation Organization. So part of granting access to higher education for first-generation students is putting it back in their hands. So giving them the tools that they need, but allowing them to do it themselves. So that's really important to me, to offer them the opportunity to learn the skills and then teach them to other first-generation students. So tomorrow we're having kind of a kickoff event, a bingo night, just to get people used to our presence on campus and know about it and gain some awareness. But that's one of the initiatives. Other things that I do, I'm an advisor for the Advocates for Inclusive Mentoring program at St. Ben's. So that's a Benny's only group as of now, but there is a counterpart at St. John's called Justice. But I advise the AIM program at St. Ben's, and that is a program that is to offer mentoring opportunities to and from historically underrepresented Bennies, so juniors and seniors from historically underrepresented identities mentor underclass students. And that's just another way for students to get used to helping each other through the process and having someone to just guide them and navigate them. And that's, the reason that my title is College Navigator is really that's what I'm trying to do, is help people navigate. And that doesn't require me to be an expert in everything. It just requires me to be a really good guide, because there are people on campus that can help them with all of these issues. But it's nice for them to have a place to start. So just like a starting point that I can direct them then onward. So that's my role in access to higher education.
Man, your role sounds like my role currently. So my name is Precious Palmer. I'm one of the assistant directors in our multicultural student offices at St. University. So I've kind of played a variety of roles within our office. So I started out as a professional staff at St. Cloud State in 2013. And I started out with a grant program called the FREE program, which is facilitating responsible educational experiences. So we are working with first generation students, low income students, and students of color within that cohort, just making college an easy transition for those students. So we're working with students that didn't have over a 3.0 GPA, that are by characteristics are bound to struggle in some cases. They are first generation, so they may not have the support at home of understanding college life or the college experience. So we were really helping them navigate that experience. And so it was 3 coordinators, myself included. And all of us played a role on campus, and we had different entities that we partnered with. So I partnered with the Career Center. There was another coordinator that partnered with financial aid, and then there was another person that partnered with the tutoring services on campus as well. All of those are key indicators for success for students on our campus as well. And then all of us had a potential stakeholder and the advising center as well. So all of us were advising our students as well. So the experience that you have with your advisor on campus is very key, because you want to make sure that you're guiding your students in the right direction once they come into your institution. And I think that was very key for that particular grant. So then I moved on to a different role with another grant called the EAST grant. So that grant was really working with our faculty and staff on campus, helping students become more successful outside of the campus. So particular faculty may come to us and say, this student is sleeping in the classroom, or they're always on their phone, or this student hasn't shown up in 3 weeks to class. I need your help in figuring out what the circumstance may be, or if there's a particular situation that this student is going through, and if you can help me kind of get them back to the classroom and figure out what resources they can utilize to help them be successful as students on our campus. And so really it was my job. I call myself the stalker on our campus, because I was literally hunting down students in the dorms, at Caribou, finding them in the hallway, sometimes in our offices, like, hey, I've been looking for you, right? But it was that kind of approachable feeling like, hey, I really want to help you. I want to make sure that you succeed here at St. Cloud State. I want to be an advocate for you while you're on campus. And we know that's one of the things that a lot of our students of color and students in general struggle with, is becoming their own self-advocate on campus. A lot of people don't know who to turn to, who to talk to, who to go to, and who will actually support them as students while they're on campus. So that was really key and a part of that grant program. Then next position, so then I became the interim assistant director. Now I am a permanent assistant director in the office, and so my role kind of encompassed all of those different things. And then I also added a few things with working with our admissions team on campus, and I think our admissions team is really great at St. Cloud State. They're really open to new ideas on our campus, and so we ended up partnering with them and figuring out ways that we can really help our college access groups. So College Possible, TRIO, AVID, Upward Bound, Gear Up, different programs in those ways, helping those students become more prepared when they get ready to transition into college, and figuring out what are some of the barriers, or what are some of the challenges, what are some tips that you need to know. And I would bring a student panel with me every time I would come, at least 4 students, right? And you don't want to always hear a faculty or staff talk to you about your experience at a university. you want to hear it firsthand from the students that are actually going there to say, I'm struggling with paying for groceries, right? So those are some of the things that people actually struggle with, right? I can tell you from my experience as a staff person, but really you want to hear it from the students, what their struggles are, some of the things that they can give you advice on as students coming into college, and some of the things they thought they knew that they didn't know at the time, right? So we work very closely with them, and through that partnership with Multicultural Student Services in the admissions office, then we partner with College Possible about how can we make our students more successful on campus. And because I worked with the first grant program, the free program, it was great that I kind of stepped into that role, and now I'm the coach supervisor for the College Possible coaches on campus. So right now we have 4 College Possible coaches that I work with, and they're basically helping those students with financial aid resources, helping them find jobs on campus, resume building, and then I'm just kind of training them into this role. Because all of those coaches are coming in as new professionals into this field. Some of them are most likely just graduating out of college, but also it helps that they are a St. Cloud State alumni, right? They already know a lot of the general resources that we have on campus. Now they just need the training to actually back it up and figure out how to support students on our campus. And within that program, we do have a lot of first generation, low income, and students of color. So we want to make sure that we really serve those different populations, because we know they will eventually struggle at some point or hit a bump in the road. And we want to make sure that that bump in the road doesn't deter them from completing college and getting that college degree at the end. So really, we do a host of things on our campus, and one of the biggest things that we kind of came up with College Possible was the community leaders, but I'll let Hannah kind of talk more about that because she's right now heading that program, and she can kind of tell you more about some of the initiatives on that front. But that's what we're kind of doing at St. Cloud State. I think the newest initiative is the partnership with College Possible and all the talents that they bring with them.
So my name is Sydney Robinson. I am currently a junior creative writing English major from Las Vegas, Nevada. As of right now, I am the Women's Initiative Rep, soon to be Vice President of the St. Ben Senate, as well as I'm the coordinator and intern for the Advocates for Inclusive Mentoring program that Hannah was talking about a little earlier. I think part of the access to higher education to understand that because of certain things are in place, home situations, length of distance from school, a lot of different factors affect how students are able to work on campus. So personally for myself, I work 20 hours on campus, I work 20 hours off of campus on top of interning, on top of my involvement, just to be able to afford to go here on myself. And that's not different from a lot of students on campus. And I think we need to recognize that these students, a lot of people put their work before they put their classes, which is why a lot of low-income students seem to have the lower end of GPAs, is because we're putting our work first so that we're able to actually afford to go here, so that we're missing out on tutoring. If we can pick up just one more shift, we're able to get one more extra training just so we can afford, have the privilege to be here. So while I've been here, some of the projects that I've been working on to make it more equitable is one, the Benny Career Closet, which is something that we started last November, which allows all Bennies able to get professional dress. We've noticed that a lot of students have been missing out on these great opportunities because they didn't feel they had appropriate clothes. So through the alumni network and different juniors and seniors on campus, they've been donating clothes so that we have students, going to the Minnesota private college thing, being able to wear really nice clothes for study abroad, or even going to those formal dinners with Mary Hinton so that they can feel comfortable, because we've been proven time and time again, the better you dress, the better you feel, the better you do. And then another thing that I've been working on through Senate has been giving meals during breaks. So certain meal plans, at least on the St. Ben side, do not work at all during Thanksgiving, Easter, or long break, and we're forced to use our flex, which around those times, most of us have spent on coffee by then. So we are making sure that these students have food, whether they're in apartments, whether in dorms, because not everyone has access to a kitchen, not everyone has access to a car to go to Coburn's, and I think not enough people realize the struggle it takes to be international or to be out of state or just not be able to go home because of your situation. So through that, I'm hoping that in my time here, I'm able to get meal plan changes and work with residential life as well as student development so that we can make it more equitable for these students. Since we do come so far, we don't have the ability to just go home and forget things. Like I know a lot of students, myself included, had to work Thanksgiving break because we couldn't afford to just have a week off and not be able to work.
Hello, can you all hear me? Okay. My name's Hannah Jensen. I am one of the college coaches at St. Cloud State University. And Precious talked a little bit about what we do, but basically I work with low income and first generation students. And I help them to connect them with resources, to be kind of a support for them, and also to really help them overcome some of the barriers that they experience in the college setting to help them progress to the next steps to get to graduation. So some of the things I do within that is help them with complete FAFSA, help with registration, study abroad opportunities, really anything college related and future related beyond that, or like work related beyond that as well. So some of the new initiatives that Precious was talking about with the community leaders, we just started a new program this year. So that's where a lot of college possible students, so there's about 10 to 12 students? About 10 to 12 students who are leaders within the College Possible program can really take on leadership opportunities and create more opportunities for College Possible students within that. So some of the things we're looking at doing in the future years are we're gonna have 3 co-chairs. So there's 3 different areas that they'd be like working on. So one's recruitment of College Possible students on campus. One is engagement, so that can be building community between College Possible students. Also engagement with people in services on campus. And also another one is planning events focused on serving the community as well. So that way they can really be more successful in connecting to resources, connecting to each other, all of that stuff. Yeah. Is there anything else I should add on that? Okay.
Okay, so we'll open it up to questions from the audience. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, and then I'll let the panelists decide who they would like to respond to first. I can always kick it off. I always have questions, but I want to make sure that you all have a chance to speak first.
Can we just shout them out?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if anyone else went to Tom Jolton's speech last night. NPR correspondent who wrote a book about the changing face of America. And he reminded us that by 2044, racial makeup in the United States is going to look radically different. And I forget the exact proportions. So I'm wondering what you see as the biggest opportunities and challenges to meeting the needs of an increasingly diverse or non-white population. He said that the population under 5 years old in the United States is already majority non-white. So what does that mean for 15 to 20 years from now in terms of college education at a private and a public institution like what we have?
I can go first. So for high school, I went to a predominantly African-American school in a low-income area. I'm not really low income, but I still went to that school anyway. And I think one of the biggest problems that I noticed there as well as here is that all teachers are teaching this for one type of person. Whatever pedagogy they learned in college is the one way they're teaching, and they're not really adapting to students who maybe English isn't their first language, or they didn't have that much learning development while they're at home, or they just didn't come from the most supportive background where academics were supposed to be put first in comparison to maybe working or helping out the family. And I think it's important to recognize that, yes, we have different like sensory learners, people who learn by doing, people who learn by seeing, but there's also people who need help and need more to be reached out to, or need that more independence to do things. And I think if through pedagogy and the way we teach teachers to teach students, to recognize like there's not one type of student, especially students don't come from the same kind of high school. Like for my school, taking the SAT and getting 800 was a good thing. Like as low as that sounds, like that's the goal for people to get, because that's the bare minimum. That's how high we get compared to other schools there where everyone got 2400s. And I think recognizing like where the backgrounds of their students come from and like the type of learning they've had so far, like you need to meet people halfway. Like I understand there is a bar for college, but if we don't meet people where they're at in like those first year seminars, those 100 level classes, they're gonna transfer, they're gonna leave, they're gonna go to community colleges. Or for me, like where in my city, you don't really need a degree. they're just not going to go back to school because they feel like they're a failure, that they were at the top of their high school, but now they're here in like the big pool of big sharks, and their teachers aren't giving them the assistance that they actually need to succeed.
So I think that's something that's happening on our campus as we speak. Our student of color population is growing. Before, when students were on campus years ago, they could point out probably every student of color that was on our campus, and they knew them by face and name, right? So right now we're at 30% with our international students and our domestic students of color on campus. And even though our numbers are shrinking for students that are becoming incoming students, our numbers are growing for students of color and international students. So we're seeing all of those things that you're talking about now kind of developing. And I think some of the, I think you said challenges or concerns, I think it's just having the staff and making sure that you can actually support those growing numbers of students is going to be really important for your campus. And I think at certain points, even the staff that's been working there 30 years in our department and over, they really thought that our identity offices would soon go away, but we need them more now than ever because we are seeing those growing populations. We're becoming that melting pot that a lot of people talk about, and it's really different, especially on the predominantly white campus, and you're a student of color, and you may seem like you're a large population, but once you get into those classrooms or different spaces, it looks very different for like our students of color or for students in those different identity centers. So I think it's just the support that those students actually get is going to be really important. And I don't know if you guys are going through this, but we're like going through budgets because we have the lower numbers that aren't coming at the same rate as students used to because of all the high school graduating rates. They're not as high as they used to be. We're struggling with budgets and keeping people and keeping resources. So we're really trying to fight, like, how do we think of creative ideas to actually engage with these students and touch base with these students. And I think because if you have a great staff on your team that's really willing to go above and beyond to reach out to students, go to different events with students. Like every night I feel like we're at a different cultural night or supporting our students with our student cultural organizations or going to different events or serving as advisors for these different student organizations. I think just being a support system, showing your face around campus and showing that support to our students is going to be very important. And then also the partnerships that you make around your campus is very important as well too. So like I talked about our admissions partnership, that's very important to us. Because there are some admissions offices, they don't want to work with you, they don't want to change your structure, they don't feel like this should be the priority, and I really appreciate our admissions team because they see our student of color population as really a priority on our campus, and they wanted that to grow from the numbers that we had previously, and it really has because we've kind of taken part in giving them advice like saying, why don't you add a student panel, or why don't you have like LGBT or Women's Center or someone from Multicultural Student Services speak to these students, because that population is becoming more diverse every day. And so you really want people that can work with you as that population changes and as it grows on your campus as well.
Just to echo some of Precious's points, I think one of the challenges is going to be funding. So we all know that money is the root of all evil and the root of all change. Being able to dedicate funds to have this widespread change and institutional change is going to be really important, but also a really big challenge because nobody has a plethora of money to just throw around to different places. I think also a really big challenge is going to be the education of everybody on campus. So like you had stated, like staff members, I think that as that diversity percentage grows, it's going to need to permeate, this education and cultural agility is going to need to permeate throughout the institution. So it can't just be the two people that work in the intercultural and international student services office. My hope would be, after a couple years, like, my position wouldn't be needed because people would be well versed in the struggles of a first generation student, and that they would be able to advocate for that student and understand what they're coming to the table with. So I think that education is also going to be a really big challenge, to get people to care about it enough and to acknowledge what an important change is happening, that they start to educate themselves and become agile in the cultural competencies of a whole different slew of people. Mm-hmm.
So kind of bouncing off that, something that I notice a lot in my career is that we do a lot to help incoming, first year students. There's a lot of education around, there's a lot of education people that interact with first year students, but there's this drop off point of transfer students, which is what you see more and more first generation students who are going to college, community college route and then transferring in. And I see such a disconnect with education with the staff, the faculty, and even the students that come and transfer. Can you speak on that? And ways you guys can help?
Do you want to go or do you want me to go? Okay, so St. Ben's and St. John's still have a relatively low transfer rate or percentage, but I would agree with you that I see a lack of support for some of those students. I think admission-wise, we do a really good job of, preparing them to enter, but then there's a loss of, where do we put these students because we have such a low percentage. I think that there needs to be intentional support, as there is for like the first generation students, targeted towards transfer students, at least at the beginning, to get somebody who's really well educated and kind of an expert in that field of the struggles of a transfer student at the institution, because at any institution it's going to be a different answer. Like St. Cloud State versus St. Ben's and St. John's, it's going to be a different story for all of those students. But I think that there has to be some intentionality behind hearing those stories, because I think a lot of times we hear them in private and individualized settings, whereas we don't have a lot of data or haven't analyzed any of these stories together in bulk to see what those issues are. So I think that definitely some data collection and bringing those all together would be a really good start. But I can't speak to whether or not that's something that's happening on campus. I haven't heard of anything like that, but that would be my suggestion.
So I definitely agree with that statement, that there is a lot of focus on the freshman students. And there's so many things that are targeted towards the freshman students. And normally the reason is because they need the most support, right? And we've been doing data, I think the last 3 months or so, our president gathered some data about our students. We had great numbers for freshman students for retention, but then it would drop off from sophomore to junior year. And he said the reason was because we aren't focusing necessarily on those students, right? We're focusing on the freshman students, making sure they have a smooth transition, right? But after that freshman year, what are you actually doing with those students? Are you providing services? Are you still reaching out with the same support and momentum that you had during their freshman year? And I think that's a huge concern, right? Because with all the shrinking numbers that we have of students that are actually coming to college and then actually maintaining those students and retaining those students until graduation is a very difficult part, because you never know after that first year that student starts to get into their major, they've kind of grown as a person, and then they are going through probably even more struggles than they had their freshman year, right? They're dealing with more so academics, getting more involved in clubs and organizations, they're getting more intense in their majors. And so I see a lot of sophomore students come in and they're so overwhelmed and stressed because they feel like, I can't get into my major, I'm done with all of my generals, I don't know what to do at this point, it's a struggle for me, and then they stop out. and you never hear from those students again, and in some cases, there's no student or faculty or staff on campus reaching out to those students to actually pull them back to campus to say that you can actually make it to graduation. And these are the tools or the explanations why you can make it through college. And I think that's one of the things that we're kind of dealing with on our campus. And our president kind of put it out there as a mission that we need to figure out what to do as a campus and how to engage our sophomore and junior students better, and what kind of activities or programming or support that we can provide for these students. And even though our freshman students are important, I feel like the eye is always on them. We want to make sure that they have a great experience coming in. We want to make sure that transition isn't difficult. But you're not also looking at the other part of that you're not focusing on their transition from the freshman year to the sophomore, junior year, and on to graduation. If we only are making sure that these students get to their sophomore year, then we're not actually doing our job as professionals on our campus to make sure that they actually graduate with that degree. And that's really why students start college. Do you think they really want to stop out or drop out because they think they can't make it or they don't have the support system? Of course they don't. They want to actually graduate with that degree and actually make money. That's what I always hear students say. That's their ultimate goal, make money. So a lot of our students want to do that, but there are struggles and barriers that they encounter along the way, and then they just feel like as if people have forgotten about them. No one is reaching out to them actively, and we have all this new technology and systems, but who are they focused for? The freshman students. It's not really focusing on the rest of the students on our campus and helping them become more successful and stronger as students. And even after that freshman year, students are still struggling with the same exact things: time management, how to be an advocate for themselves. And I think that's the main thing that students are still trying to get the courage enough to do throughout their senior year, is figuring out how to be the best advocate for themselves and training them with those skills. But do you think they've really learned that in that year time as a freshman student, when there's so many people like, I can help you, I want to help, here are all the resources, and then we just forget about them, right? They still need that support. They still need someone that says that I care about your success on our campus. And I really think that's something that's missing, but it's really up to all the faculty and staff on our campus to really put that forth as an initiative to say, what do we do to help these students?
Malik?
Yep.
So I'm curious to know, one, how have you done that? But then two, what would you be doing if you weren't working that extra 20 hours? Are there things that you haven't been able to do because of that?
Yeah. So the way I've been able to do it is I have a planner. I get maybe 5-6 hours because I do also take an 18 credit load. So I do a lot, but I do believe it's the good Lord's work. So I came in as a track recruit, but because of financial reasons, St. Ben's, they give you a beautiful financial aid, like beautiful. And then sophomore year, everything kind of like slowly disappears until you have nothing. So I had to sacrifice track my sophomore, junior, and probably next year, depending on how my packet looks, because I do have to work those 20 additional hours off campus remote. And I think there's a lot of students that I know on that, because we only give 5 to 6 or 10 to 12 work awards, and then in special cases like mine, 20 hours, that they have to go off campus to get jobs. They have to go to the mall, they have to work remotely. And it's kind of hard, especially for students that don't have license, students who don't have the means or the ability to bring their cars out here, especially because we are in such a middle of nowhere kind of place. And I think financial aid and like different administrative things need to do a better job at accessing what students' actual need is, on top of us being advocates for ourselves and saying, hey, like, I need more of this, I need a better way. Like, it's on both parts that we need to reach out and say, like, I need more. Because came in on a 5 to 6. Had I not said, hey, I'm struggling, hey, I have these issues going on, hey, like I'm not gonna make my bill, I wouldn't be able to do the 20 hours that I'm doing currently.
Can you talk also about how your peers can help support you without overshadowing your making assumptions?
Can you rephrase that just a little bit?
So how could other students help you too? We talk about faculty and staff being educated, but how could your classmates help support you?
I think we have a lot of support things in place. Like my first year, we had First Year Forward, we have AIM, we have different offices, and I think something that shifted from my first year to now is that there has been a lot of peer-to-peer things happening. Like I don't want to say we just cut off faculty, we've cut administration, but we've just decided that if we want immediate results, we want tangible things, that we're just gonna go to the person that we know who the most relatable person is to us. So we've been very much counting on each other, depending on each other more than we have been doing the faculty already. And then there's also obviously the president's office and the VP's office, they have financial means if you need help. We have both senates that give students money for obviously professional academic endeavors, but ways so that there's ways that we're all trying to work with each other. And there's different clubs and different programs that are giving students these access points that they wouldn't have had they gone anywhere else or had they just stayed at home.
So can I touch on that a little bit? So on our campus, I think one of the strongest components that we have are our student organizations, because they are those people that hear about all the stories like, oh my gosh, I can't pay for rent, I'm failing classes, I think I'm about to drop out, right? So one of the things that we do with some of our students is we train them to be advocates for other students. Like if you hear of a student struggling, tell someone else, say, hey, I have this friend, they're struggling with academics, what should I tell them to do? Should I come tell them to talk to you, right? And we tell them, bring them to our office, let them talk to us, we're not here to judge them. And I really think a lot of students feel like we're their parents and we're looking down on them, judging them, and they're just I feel so embarrassed coming to you. I was this is what I get paid for. I get paid to help you succeed. So I'm not judging you, I'm not your mom or dad, but I say the most embarrassing thing for you is to fail and say you did nothing, and then to go home to your parents and say, I failed, and I didn't reach out to help, I didn't go look for support, right? At least you could say, I did reach out to support and I did all these other steps along the way. And I think one of our key things that we do with our cultural organizations is encourage them to provide that own mentorship within their clubs and organizations. So a lot of them have study tables for students. It's not like I'm saying, oh, you're struggling with classes. It's really open to all of the students in the organization to say, I'm going to be at the library at this time. Please come study with us. You get points to go to conferences and other events and different things like that. So they use that as an incentive for their members to go to different events and things that they have going on in their organizations. And then some of them also have peer mentor programs within those organizations where they pair an upperclassman with a freshman or anyone that wants to get paired with a peer mentor to kind of help them and figure out who to talk to on campus. And they kind of serve as those mentors on campus that we look out to say, hey, how are things going with the students? Is there anything that's concerning? Should I come speak at your student organization? Can I be more helpful in what possible way, right? So there's tons of different things that students can do. Nobody's helpless, right? There's tons of different ideas that you can do to help your peers succeed on campus as well. I think it really takes a community of people to really help all of you succeed, right? That's one of the things that my grandmother always lives by. It takes a community to really help everyone succeed and get through. It doesn't just take faculty and staff. If you know someone is struggling, make sure you help them, talk to them, tell them that I can go with you to this place, or I can walk with you, or I know this person that can help you through these issues or concerns. And I think just helping them become an advocate through working with you is the best thing that you can possibly do for your peers as well.
I'm a professor here. I teach in the accounting and finance department. I've been teaching for 8 years, and this is our first year where we have 25% of the first year class is students of color and
So I'm still thinking through that question. So I think we look at all of those things. We definitely look at our students of color. We look at our student athletes. We look at students in our ACE program, which is a probationary admit program, and students have to take 2 classes that really helps prepare them for college life, right? And help them with that transition. So they didn't get in with that 3.0 GPA, or they may have not had those ACT scores that they're looking for in the admissions office, but they do have that program. So we look at those numbers as well, and then we look at the overall numbers of our students on campus to see how they compare. And so I think one of the things that we do is we look at what we're, I guess for our office, I would say, we look at things that we may not be doing in our office. Like, okay, our numbers for our students of color are low for registration right now. I think we need more of a presence on campus, talking to more of the student organization leaders, telling them to get students registered, and kind of serving as a mouthpiece and getting the students to talk to their members about getting registered or completing the FAFSA, or even working with College Possible as well too. In our office, we're tracking those numbers. And so the numbers for College Possible that we have right now are really good. We track the retention of those students from year to year. And then we also track like the GPA and credit completion rate of our College Possible students. So we're tracking different cohorts as we see fit to figure out where we can be the best resource for our students on campus, because there are specific people that have an interest in working with those different populations, especially student athletes. That's one of the things that we have in our office, on our campus. In our multicultural center, we have the Richard R. Greenhouse. It also focuses on helping students with tutoring services, but it also has that athlete component as well, athletes for success in the classroom. So our other assistant director works with athletes, getting them more tutoring services on campus, making it mandatory for athletes to go to. So that's one of the things that we noticed, that some of our athletes would come that first year, and then that next year they would like fail out or get suspended, or they wouldn't come back for some reason. And we noticed it was because of academics. That was the strongest component. Like, they weren't doing well in the classroom. They may have been doing well on the field, but they're not performing academically. So what can we do to actually help those students be successful on campus? So I think it's a little trial and error. And then also, I guess, not pointing the fingers to say, you guys are doing something wrong because your numbers aren't high enough, but to look at yourself as an office, or to provide support for those different entities where you see, okay, the numbers are lower for students of color, or the numbers are lower for athletes. What initiative can we do, and what incentive can we do for these different populations to make sure that those numbers actually grow from semester to semester or from year to year? And so we're tracking all of that information. And I think for Director of Multicultural Student Services, he's very big on tracking the data, making sure that if there are pockets or gaps that he sees within that data, that we can track it right away. He doesn't just sit and wait on the data to come to him. He goes to the data team to say, I need this data and I need it now. I need to figure out how many students of color are graduating. I need to figure out how many students of color may get suspended, and so let's send out an email or a message to those students, right? So he's doing various different things to make sure that we're recognizing the challenges that we may face or lack in our office, and then also looking at the different things and seeing, okay, the numbers are a little higher for the ACE students or the College Possible students. What are they doing that we should be doing? Should we be holding study tables, or should we be becoming more active with our student clubs and organizations and being more of a face with our students, right? So we're trying to figure out what are the best next steps to kind of resolve some of the things that we're seeing. I hope that kind of answered your question.
Maybe if I could pin you down a little bit, would you say that the numbers are improving? Is the gap closing?
Yes, the gap is definitely closing between the two things that we're doing. I think because we're doing all these different functions on campus, there's so many different pockets around campus of people. There's College Possible, there's our ACE program, there's all these different programs for students. So the gap is definitely closing, and so we see better numbers for overall retention of those students and the GPA and credit completion rate of those students as well too.
Maybe for the people from the end. So we talk about first-gen students, low-income students, and students of color, and kind of lump them together. I'm curious about the overlap between, I think when we think of first-gen student, we lump that in with students of color and low-income. But what about our rural students that are either low-income and first-gen as well? And what are the overlaps in terms of needs and then also strengths that they have with students from a more urban area? I think of our students that were from major cities, Twin Cities, Houston, LA, et cetera. What do they have in common with a student from, kind of like out?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a really good question. So for Bob, numbers guy, I did some data collection the first like half a year that I was in this position. And of our first generation students, 60% of them are actually white students. So I think that that's a really important key piece of data because we do that a lot with first gen. You pair that with the intersections that might come with that, like low income and student of color. And then on the reverse side of our American students of color, 60% of those are first generation. So those are some numbers for you to put it into perspective a little bit. I think that it varies a lot. So I think some commonalities between first generation students from here versus, California or Texas is the preparedness. So for maybe academic rigor or like the common questions that people have that you call home to mom and dad about. So like even if it's like a roommate conflict or if they are struggling in a class and they missed an assignment, when somebody whose parents have graduated from college has a student in college, that student can call back and say, hey, I missed this assignment. I'm kind of freaking out. What do I do? And that parent is equipped to tell them, go talk to them. Like, it's okay, turn it in, and then like go talk to them about what happened. Whereas like a first gen student from anywhere might struggle with understanding that that's something that you can do. So I actually just had a conversation about that with a faculty member whose student was a first generation student, and they just didn't turn in their assignment because they thought that if they missed the deadline, that was it, that's the only opportunity they had. So I think there's a lot of commonalities in the experiences, and I always say that first generation student experiences are spread across the board to all students. It's just amplified. So all students struggle with time management in college. It's just amplified for a first generation student because they don't have those support systems in place or somebody to talk to who has prepared them for that experience that they're going to have. So I think that it's not just a commonality across the intersections of race in first generation students or location. It's intersections really with all students. It's just about the level of support that they may have gotten or education they may have gotten beforehand and have in hand at college.
So I think I'm going to be very brief with this one because I think she summed it up perfectly. But I think exactly what she said, a lot of the resources that first generation and low income students receive is like you're working 40 hours a week just to pay for school and pay for the necessities or pay for rent or other things that you may need as a student. And some other students on campus that aren't first generation or low income students may not have those same barriers where they have to work that frequently. Like I work with students all the time that don't have time for extracurricular activities, don't get involved in clubs and organizations, but they have a 3.0, 3.5 GPA, right? They're great in their academics, but all they did was work their entire time that they were in school. So then once they start doing those like job interviews, like, so what did you do as a student? I just worked. Had 2 or 3 jobs, working 40, 50 hours a week just to pay for school or just to make ends meet, because I don't have family members or people helping me through this process. And I think that's one of the biggest things with like first generation and low income students is the affordability and the resources.
Did we answer your question? I feel like I beat around and like hit the edges, but didn't get the...
Urban versus rural and what the different strengths and weaknesses
Different
of those
strengths and
have. I would think of if a student's going from high school, 75 graduating class going to a place like St. John, that's very, very different than a student who financially looks exactly the same,
Yeah.
but coming from a high school that graduates a college student.
Right. Are you thinking specific to these institutions?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm curious about, from St. John's perspective.
Sure.
And then from St. Much more.
Okay. So, let me think on that. Let me think on that a little bit.
I think for that, I talk with a lot of admissions groups, and I do see those students that come from those smaller schools, and they're like, St. Cloud State is so big. And it's like, it's really not. I mean, you could get anywhere across campus in 10 minutes, so it's not that big. And so I think for those students, they get overwhelmed very easily by the thought of they're in a new environment. It's not as familiar, and you seem like a small fish in a big pond type of thing. Really, even though St. Cloud isn't super big, we are pretty large as far as student body, but the campus isn't that large at all. I mean, we're actually a very small campus in that like radius. So I think that's one of the things that you just get overwhelmed. You feel like you get lost in this sea of people. And I feel like those students feel that they're kind of just a number in some of these classrooms where they may have been in much smaller classrooms in high school, and it's an overwhelming feeling to be in like a general class setting and you have 100 students and you feel like I don't fit in here. And that may be very different based on where that student came from, right? You may have a city kid that came there and say, this is very small. St. Cloud State is super small. The community is very small. It's like, we're not that small. But, and those are the differences that we hear, right? It's either way too big or it's way too small for my liking. Like, we hear that a lot of times from the students coming from the Twin Cities, like, St. Cloud State is so small. It's like, oh, well, yeah, depending on where you're coming from, St. Cloud State may be small in comparison to where you graduated from or the area that you live in. But for other students, this may be an eye-opening experience, right? Because our campus is so diverse. You're meeting different people. You're getting exposed to different resources on campus. So I think that's really helpful for some students. And then for certain students, it could hinder them at times based on the experiences that they've had before in high schools.
I locked down 2 key examples from students at St. Ben's and St. John's that I've heard. So I think supports is a really big difference between rural and urban. And knowledge of identities and advocacy for themselves. So I think a lot of the urban students that I work with are aware of their identities, so they know that they're first generation, versus a lot of the rural students that I work with have no idea what that means. So that's a really big difference. I think that in the schools, in urban settings, they talk about that a lot more, and they make students aware of what that might mean for them. Whereas, like, I came from Sauk Center, Minnesota. I had no idea what that meant. We never talked about anything like that. And I think that might be because a lot of the students in rural areas, their parents were first, like, their parents may not have gone, so you don't talk about that because the majority may be first generation coming from those areas. And then I think it just escalates into the supports. So because they're more aware in those urban settings of the different identities, they build in more supports for those students. So a lot of the students that I work with from urban areas have been a part of those college prep programs, so like College Possible, Trio, Upward Bound, or they go to a specific school that prepares them specifically for that. So they come in with at least some awareness of who they are, what they need to do, and some advocacy skills from those programs. Whereas a lot of the the rural students that I work with, they come in and they don't know. You know, I have to define for them why they're getting my emails. They're like, what's first generation student? I don't think I am. And I'm like, okay, well, what's your parents' educational history? And they're like, oh, that's what that means. And they have never had those programs. So like in smaller towns, it's less likely that you're gonna have those kind of college prep programs. So I think that those are some really key differences, and may even set apart urban students to succeed a little bit faster in college because they have some of those skills and that knowledge, versus those rural students who don't know about that stuff yet.
That actually sets us at time. So that's perfect. But if our panelists are available, please feel free to stick around and speak with them and talk about any further ideas that might have been provoked. Thank you all for coming to the final Politics in a Pint. I've had a great semester, a great year with you all, and I really appreciate all of your support. If you're looking for more McCarthy Center events to attend, tomorrow night there will be the Healthcare Summit in Quad 170 at 6 o'clock. We would love to see you there. We have a couple more events that will be coming out, or that'll be coming up here before the end of the year. Check your email. We'll be there. Thank you.